Hey, my name is Casey Arriaga. I am a clinician here at Windmill Wellness Ranch, which is a residential treatment program and intensive outpatient program for addiction and other mental health issues. So one thing that we notice is that people often change in a series of stages. We call them the stages of change model. And those 5 things are pre-contemplation, before we think we have a problem; contemplation, when we recognize there's a problem; planning, when we start to decide what we're going to do about it; action, when we start doing something about it; and maintenance, when we've gotten all the way to the point where that plan has become just a daily part of our lives. The first stage we call pre-contemplation, and that's a stage where they don't even think they have a problem, or if they recognize that there are any troubles, they blame them on someone else, maybe even you. That's pre-contemplation. Usually the example I give around that is, if I noticed that my jeans were getting tighter, I might say, it's not me, it's the dryer. My jeans are shrinking. I'm not looking at my part in things yet. Your loved one may be in that same spot, and if family members are really astute, they may notice you could be in that spot. You might be saying, well, my loved one didn't really have a problem. This is what everybody does in college. Or my father did the same thing. Or it's just not that big a deal. Or I'm afraid to cause waves and trouble by saying anything. All of that is pre-contemplation. So notice where your loved one might be there or you might be there. So if somebody's in the pre-contemplation stage, one thing that we can do is ask them questions, and we recommend to ask them gently and lovingly rather than demandingly or trying to get them to change, but just asking them things like, is your life going the way that you want? Are you getting the results you want from your actions? Let them think about that. Ideally, you might get a professional counselor involved to ask some of those questions, but if you're not at that stage of things yourself, you might just ask a few of those questions and also ask them of yourself. Start to think in terms of, am I getting what I want out of life? And is there something that I can do to change that rather than waiting for my loved one to change? But with any luck, we all start moving into the next stage of change, which is contemplation. In the contemplation stage, we're starting to think, maybe there is a problem and maybe there's something I can do about it. We haven't made any big decisions yet, but we are thinking in terms of something is wrong and it might be at least partly my responsibility to do something about it. With the dryer and the jeans example, this is the moment where I stop and think, maybe it's not the dryer, maybe it's not the jeans, maybe I'm gaining a little bit of weight. It's the first time I look at the problem. So in the same way, you might see some signs that your loved one is starting to think in terms of, what is going on here? It's not working for me. Maybe I want to do something different. That's a point where you can be encouraging. And also notice for yourself, are you in contemplation? Are you starting to look at what you could do differently, not to make them change, but to make your own life better, to focus on your own recovery? Ideally, we go from there into the planning stage. And in planning, we start to look and say, what is it that I'm going to do about this? So this might be the point where you start to look up some treatment centers, or you start to see if you can find a recovery meeting, something like that. Whether your loved one is looking at it for themselves or you're looking at it for your own recovery, one way or the other, you're starting to make a plan about what you can do. This is sometimes where family members get really excited. My loved one is changing, they're making a plan. But one thing to recognize about contemplation and planning is that it's easy to fall back into pre-contemplation from those spots. If that happens with your loved one, don't get too discouraged. This is a natural part of the process. If they became convinced they needed help once, they'll probably seek it more quickly the next time. So just be patient with yourself and with them, as they may cycle through this for a bit. But once they've finally got a solid plan and feel enough motivation and it's no longer safe to go back to pre-contemplation in their own mind, then they might move on to the next stage, which is going to be action. And this is where somebody actually makes a move to change their lives. They may start going to meetings, they may call a few treatment centers, they may sign up to go somewhere, and this again, where we can get excited. And it's a great stage, but we've got to recognize that it's also a little bit fragile. We're just trying something out. It's kind of like we're now trying on new jeans or trying on a pair of shoes and walking around the store to see if they're a good fit. We haven't decided 100% if we're taking them home. So getting overly excited and kind of pushing your loved one, are you going to those meetings? This is going great. I would back off from that and instead just allow them their journey. You can be gently encouraging to yourself or to them as you're exploring your recovery and they're exploring theirs, but just let it be its own process. Now, ideally, everybody gets into that 5th stage, which they call maintenance, which in addiction recovery is a little bit of a misnomer. When somebody's in maintenance, they're actually growing. But this is the part where these things have become a normal, natural part of my life. So if I go back to the example of the jeans, it's kind of like, first I thought it wasn't my problem, then I decided it was. Maybe I made a plan, got a gym membership, started going to the gym. Well, the maintenance stage is where everyone just takes for granted that I exercise. No one's cheering me on, no one's knocking me down. They're just, hey, I'm gonna go for a run. Okay, great, see you when you get back. And that's where we want to get in recovery as well. Hey, I'm going to a meeting now. Okay, great. See you when you get back. Have a good meeting. Even in the maintenance stage, someone can go back to pre-contemplation, but the longer they've been in maintenance, the easier it is to notice that they get back to maintenance pretty quickly, even if they have moments of wavering and doubt. As a family member, I encourage you not to panic, but just to recognize, okay, this happens sometimes. I hope they reach out for their support, but if I'm feeling fear around it, I should reach out for my support rather than trying to push them to do the same. And that's the stages of change and things that you can do along the way.